tents, to cleaning streets, to taking property, to stopping murders, to stopping, it is unreasonable to do that. And I think we have to move on from that. So that's the biggest way that they failed.
Thank you, Aaron. I don't want to block you there. I feel like I'm standing in front of you. Go ahead.
I'll be really fast to piggyback off of what he said, because I think he's right. We do expect LAPD to do all of these roles that they're not equipped to do. And I think it's up to us to ask the county and the city and our elected officials to really put the resources in ways that actually help people. And so when we get policing wrong, it's that. And when we get it right is when we funnel in resources for outreach, for mental health, for addiction, for helping people on our sidewalks who need it, in conjunction with the law enforcement piece, which protects people. And I think that's when we get it right. So as long as those work in partnership and the community stays engaged and vigilant at watching, I think we can get it right.
Thank you so much. All right, so now we're going to move into the more ethereal phase. No, I'm just kidding. But really, it is a question of how you see this community. It sounds like everyone here, and I really want to thank you, especially for that last answer, because I think you perked up a lot of ears that wouldn't necessarily have expected those answers to come from you. And that's what this is all about. It's all about hearing from people and making sure we understand each other in a better way than we did before we got here. So what, in your dream state, does the future of policing in Los Angeles look like? And I'm not talking about flying cars necessarily, but what does it look like here in the community? And why don't we start with you, Eric, and then we'll work back to Blair.
Yeah, so that is a very loaded question for somebody of my disposition. But thanks for giving me the props. I just think myself as good as my job. So I think a couple things. One thing, to address the elephant in the room, I would love it if there was no other lawsuits between LA County and the LAPD.
Well, why don't you take a moment, because we've been glancing around it, why don't you tell people what the basis of this particular lawsuit is?
I'll go very fast, it's not worth our time.
Yeah, but I think we've been talking about it, so I want to make sure people understand the context.
The most recent one is an injunction against LAPD from illegally seizing and destroying the property of homeless individuals. Nothing to do with blocking sidewalks, not to do with public health, just to do with illegal seizures and destruction. And it is actually a build-off of a previous case, because LAPD and Los Angeles tend to be a little bit, need a couple different iterations before they learn the writing on the wall. But that's basically what it is. And so I'll happy to refer that to questions if people are interested. But the fact of the matter is, I think the policing in downtown in the future involves less of that sideshow stuff. I will stand by it and think it's very incredible work to say that policing does not mean you can violate the civil rights of particular human beings of a particular skin tone or income level or housing condition. But I will say, for the sake of my sake, I talk about why you do what you do. I did not get in this game to sue LAPD or Los Angeles or the city of Los Angeles. It is a very hard thing to do. It's not as easy as going to a vending machine and putting 75 cents and getting something out of it as maybe some downtown LA blogs or Facebook groups would like to suggest, and it's very hard to do. And I just think that it's important to know that the future of policing does not include that. I think it includes equitable distribution of resources. I think it includes reimagining what safety is. Safety is not policing. Safety is not LAPD, right? The safest communities are the ones that are most equitable in terms of resource distribution, right? The most unsafe communities, right, or the most heavily policed communities are the ones that happen to be with the most unequal distribution of resources, whether it be housing, jobs, right, across racial lines, class lines. And so I think the future of policing, this is kind of counterintuitive, involves taking some resources away from LAPD and putting them into situations that actually create security, right? Safety gets compromised when there's not enough security that people feel on the individual level, mostly socioeconomic, right? But if we can do that, it's kind of counterintuitive. So I don't think the idea is to throw more. I don't think the idea that we have 10,000 officers citywide, let's get to 11,000. I think we take some of that money away, redistribute to the things that actually create safety, right? Education creates safety, jobs create safety, housing creates safety like a mother trucker, right? So like, let's get that one, and I think the future policing in my dream world involves that. And there'll be a lot less sideshow antics, tents, cleaning streets. There'll be less people on the streets, and they can get to the job of actually stopping bad guys in real ways, and less about broken windows policing and punishing people for being poor, because that's only you can never stop that. We're gonna keep doing this over and over again. LAPD is talking about cat and mouse games. I I don't want to get out of about it. So I think that's the future. I know I'm filibustering. I'll let go.
We're going to go around this way, actually, so we're going to come back and you'll finish up here.
I think the future, hopefully, is what I was saying before, is partnerships with outreach and getting services to people who need it. I think it's also creating situations where police are out of their cars and walking and introducing themselves to community members and getting to know their community members, because I think that this builds trust, this builds relationships, this makes people approachable. I think that's key. I mean, that's the only key, really, in my opinion.
I agree a lot with the statement over there. One thing I want to add is the police officers. I agree with Eric. They didn't. For the most part, when they joined the academy, they didn't envision the idea of working in Skid Row, knocking on tents. But you know, what I find is for most police officers, the underlying idea of having compassion and caring about somebody's safety is still there, whether it be a murder or whether it be someone suffering on the street. And when I see, my hope as a city attorney and neighborhood prosecutor is when you see a crime, more than likely that person didn't have a design in their life to grow up to be involved in that crime. That wasn't the ultimate goal in their life, most likely. And usually that crime is a symptom of something deeper. And the future policing should be a broader respect. Understand that that crime represents something deeper, and to try to find out what that thing is and get resources, utilizing whatever resource to help address that. And we kind of see it at some level. Let me just give an example since we're talking high-minded, ethereal, what did you say?
Ethereal.
Ethereal, thank you, ethereal ideas here. I had an incident with a gentleman who was selling open-air cells of alcohol at a park downtown here, and constantly doing it. And he understood that he wouldn't be held in jail, because the jail's not going to hold somebody in for open-air cells. It was arrest and release, arrest and release. And the officer, he ended up taking him to lunch one day, and just to hear his story. And there was interchange. It wasn't one side. It was back and forth. And this gentleman started crying. And he told the officer what he wanted to do in life and kind of how he ended up on Skid Row. And this had thawed the relationship, the relationship improved. This gentleman has lessened his conduct of selling alcohol, which is a significant nuisance. It doesn't seem like a small thing, but it's a significant nuisance because that alcohol sales leads to nuisance activity out there. But this gentleman is taking steps, slow steps, because he's coming from addiction to improve his life. And that's what I'd like to see more about there. You know, let's tend to help resolve that issue, and that maybe he's not completely ready to turn his life around to go to Chrysalis and develop job skills, and then he wants to run a restaurant and then do an internship at Clifton, which are things we discussed with him. I was at that lunch. But that's what I want to see in policing.
Thank you so much.
I do think we need to actually solve the homeless problem by building housing. There's really no other solution to homelessness other than building housing first. And so I think the city, everyone involved has to pour resources towards making that happen. You can't really solve it by policing. You have to solve it by actual housing and resources pouring in. And I think I see some seeds of people waking up to that idea all over, and I appreciate that. Until we get there, we're going to